And by the way, the president may be, some say, his own best spokesperson. But should the office of the press secretary lie vacant? Well, what does he actually need? Who better to ask than two men who have held that difficult post? Ari Fleischer is a Fox News contributor and was press secretary for President George W. Bush. And Sean Spicer was President Trump's first press secretary and is now a senior advisor and spokesman for America First Action. All right, guys. Ari, let's start with you. Now, press briefings are kind of up in the air for the time being. And my question is, does he need more of a political operator in the position of press secretary than perhaps previous presidents, especially ahead of the 2020 election?
I do think, and obviously I'm a little traditional, that it can be very advantageous for the president. But it depends on who the person is and how tolerant the president is. Look, Laura, I think if he has what I would call a happy warrior, somebody who loves the president, believes in the president, will fight with the president, but does it with a humorous touch, not a truculent touch, he can turn that room to his advantage. The bias of the press is so overwhelming, it actually becomes an opportunity for a press secretary who lets the press hoist themselves on their own petard if they do the job right. Well,
Sean, you stood there day after day dealing with this. And, you know, people say President Trump's a really tough boss. He's hard. You can't please him. Like, we've all heard that. It's been said about other people, too. But you stood there and you dealt with this press day in and day out. Does he need a press secretary, or is it kind of a superfluous position at this point?
First, let me just make sure I wish the president a happy birthday today.
Yay!
But I do think he needs one, and I'll tell you why. The job, and Ari knows this better than anybody, he did it with class and just a level of integrity that was he became a mentor to me. But the job that people see on television, about 5% of what happens. There is a facilitation of access and interviews to other government officials, to information that's coming in and out of the White House, whether it's personnel, events, or policies. So the press office is very, very busy all day long facilitating these other things, logistical movements of the press pool, the rest of press arrangements for events, and also speaking on a whole host of other issues regarding the White House that aren't always exactly just the president himself. So, of course, there needs to be a press secretary in a press office. I would differ with Ari a little bit that because this president has been so much more accessible and engages so much more, I think the briefings serve a utility. They should occur, but maybe not on a daily basis. Sarah and the rest of the press team should continue with whoever fills this role to engage in the press. But as you saw with Sarah, she's out there on the driveway all the time, on camera, talking to the press. They just want it in a briefing room where they can make it about them. When the camera's just focused on her and it's not about them, they don't like it as much because it doesn't work well for their cable contracts and their YouTube views and things like that.
I think that's an excellent point. It's showtime. I mean, and they want to be, you know, they want to be the lead in the show for their network or their audience, and I guess that's human nature. But Ari, I want to get your thoughts on what CNN's Jim Acosta had to say about Sarah Sanders. Let's watch.
I think she really acted as another employee of the Trump organization. We should not be in the business of having the United States government referring to journalists or any segment of the population as the enemy of the people. I think she fell short of her duty to the American people, and it's going to be part of her legacy. And I think it's a cautionary tale for people who go to work for this president.
One of the most sickeningly biased individuals in the U.S. Press corps right now, Jim Acosta. So I'm not going to give him too much credence, but isn't the press secretary serving at the pleasure of the president? I mean, serving the president. She's not serving CNN or Fox or anyone else. She's serving the president, his agenda, and obviously wants to get it right. She doesn't want to get the issues wrong, but come on.
Well, two things. Number one, Jim Acosta just wrote a book, which I won't buy, but I heard somebody say that he wrote in there that in this day and age, it's too important to be neutral. You have to be against President Bush. That's President Trump. That's a paraphrase. So that tells you where Jim Acosta is. But the press secretary's job is to first and foremost represent the president. You are their spokesperson. Your job is to take the podium and speak on behalf of the president to represent issues the way the president would represent issues. It has nothing to do with your own demeanor, your own style, or your own viewpoints on issues. Your job is to do it the way the president wants. Now, ideally, you also do it to help the press corps get the stories and get it covered and do it accurately. And all of that is what makes it a very tricky job where you walk a tightrope between two people, two organizations, well, one person, the president, and the press corps. But make no mistake, your first boss is the president.
And Sean, real quick, would you have given George Stephanopoulos 2 days of access to the president? Yes or no? Would you have, Sean?
I think whenever President Trump can get in front of people and show, whether it's a journalist or a group, why he's doing something, and in his own words, it's a good thing. And so I always default to the fact that it's better for him to be out there showing and talking to folks about his policy. I don't know that I would have gone.
It's Stephanopoulos. You don't give him hanging out the Oval Office and standing over the President of the United States. I don't like that at all. You got to know all these things. Go ahead, Ari.
George's view of the White House should be from outside the
little...
gate. They shouldn't let him back in.
No. He's a little too comfortable in the Oval Office, Stephanopoulos.
Look,
he knows it well.
I will say this. I will say that I think that the president, there are a lot of additional outlets that have been very fair, that deserve an opportunity or would do a lot better job of presenting the president, the policies, and this administration.
Yeah, bingo. All right, panel, thanks so much.